vegetables, man. F them. They screw everything up. Everyone who's like, ooh, get your 25 grams of fiber a day. No, screw that. No, thank you. Does not work for me.
Gigi, how did you find carnivore?
Well, I want to say when I was born, my mom actually started living a ketogenic lifestyle. She has always been very into health and nutrition. She is an OBGYN, or she was. She retired maybe 20 years ago at this point. But she'd always been into health and nutrition. And I always remember when I was growing up, in our basement, there were a whole bunch of books for the keto lifestyle, the blood type diet, Atkins, so on and so forth. And I'd always like peruse through them, like, what's going on here? And eventually she sort of morphed her lifestyle a little bit more into the carnivore space. She still has some fiber in her diet via vegetables and all that kind of stuff, but she has lived this way my entire life, and I was always very fascinated by that. So I adopted a lot of those mentalities that she sort of instilled in me, especially when I went to boarding school when I was 14. I went to boarding school for snowboarding. And when I was there, we were training really hard because I was going to go and compete in the Junior Olympics. And so I was on the Colorado State snowboard team in order to get to the Junior Olympics. And when I was hiking the half pipe and, doing a whole bunch of the terrain park stuff, I started to really not feel good. And I was diagnosed with a bunch of autoimmune diseases and food allergies and intolerances. And so my mom sent me one of her ketogenic lifestyle books. And I was reading it. There was no paperback on it, so I really didn't even know what the title was. But, it told me to eliminate grains and all of that kind of stuff. And so I started to do that, and I subsisted on eating meatballs. And man, oh man, was that delicious. And I felt substantially better. But in that process, I eliminated so many things from my life that, I lost a substantial amount of weight, which I'm not an overweight person, so that wasn't a good look on me. But it was all about trial and error, trying to figure out what works for me, what doesn't work for me, how many calories, what was I burning, all that kind of stuff. And at a young age of 14, 15, I'm just like, yeah, it's a lot going on. So around the age of 18, I sort of found my footing. I regained weight and I was happier. I realized that salmon is like the one food on the face of the planet that I can truly rely on to make me feel as good as humanly possible. I love red meat, don't get me wrong. A good juicy burger is an amazing thing, but there is something about salmon, man. Woo! So I eat about 14 pounds of salmon a week because, in the carnivore lifestyle, you're just eating animals. And while here and there, I will definitely add a little butter lettuce to the mix. It's funny because, as I said, I've basically eaten a ketogenic lifestyle since the age of 14. But as I've gotten older, I've realized less and less foods work for my system to the point that fiber is just not okay with me. But butter lettuce, there's something about it that just tastes really good with salmon. So it'll be incorporated here and there once in a while when I'm like, oh my God, I need the crunch. That being said, there are other products out there like something called Carnivore Crisps here in the States, which they used to send over to the UK, but they've stopped, but they're going to reintroduce it to the UK again soon. But they're like meat dehydrated chips and they're crunchy and perfect. That being said, when I was 21, I actually had something called a cecal volvulus, where my large intestine twisted into a knot, and I had to have a colectomy. I didn't have one of those colostomy bags, or however you say it. I don't even know how to say that word. Thank goodness, because they attached my small intestines to the rectum area of my bowel. So I didn't have one of those bags or anything like that, but I did get rid of most of my colon. And I'll always remember my surgeon being like, you are never going to have any digestive issues ever again. And boy, oh boy, was that a lie. But the reason behind that mostly was because he recommended that I take something called Miralax. And Miralax, I'm the type of person who's all or nothing, hence why a carnivore lifestyle really works for me. And I also am a very repetitive eater. Like, I love eating the same thing every single day, and people think I'm crazy for that. But anyway, back to the Miralax. So they usually recommend one capful a day to help things go. But since I feel like I'm a special case, I was like, let's do 8 of them. So I was essentially poisoning myself. But I would make it, this is terrible. I would put it in a blender with like a little bit of coffee concentrate, a little bit of stevia. And I was like, ooh, it's ice cream. Yeah. So I like got excited for this stuff. But that caused infertility for me. That also poisoned me because one night I was on the ground just in doubled over in pain, like I was having another cecal volvulus, even though I had no colon. So I was like, great, now my small intestines are going for it. And I went to the hospital and I actually wound up throwing up everything, and I felt better after that. But I swore I would never take Miralax ever again. And what really has helped me is eliminating all of the not grains, excuse me, because I eliminated this a while ago, all of the fiber from my diet. So like all of the vegetables that I was eating, like F vegetables, man. F them. They screw everything up. Everyone who's like, ooh, get your 25 grams of fiber a day. No, screw that. No, thank you. Does not work for me. Now, I'm not going to say it doesn't work for other people because everybody's different. So by all means, like some people out there thrive on vegetables and fruits and blah, 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 blah. Me personally, heck no. But that's what I always tell people when they ask about my lifestyle and if I have any advice or whatever. I don't tell them, hey, go carnivore, hey, go keto, hey, do all that stuff. I say, you can try these approaches and you can use yourself as a guinea pig. And if you feel great, continue. But if you don't, then maybe you need to add in some vegetables or fruits or whatever it is. Because what I've been seeing a lot in the carnivore space these days is it's my way or the highway, and you're going to do it this way. And if you don't, you're stupid. And I hate that. And I feel like it's giving the carnivore lifestyle a bad reputation. And that's not what this approach should be. It's a lifestyle choice that people make in order to feel better. That's it. So that's my little spiel, everybody.
Yeah. It's so good to hear that even after having that operation, you were able to come out of that without having the bag.
Yeah,
Um,
I was very
yeah.
lucky.
So at this stage, like you talked about the salmon, 14 pounds of salmon, that's a lot. That's like what, 7 kilos of salmon a week. That's
It's delicious.
um so um but you mentioned you do eat red meat. So like what is
Mhm.
a typical day like for you?
So I only eat twice a day, and what usually happens is I'm really a huge fan of salmon skin specifically. So I buy salmon skin in packages, and like for lunch today, I'll have salmon skin, and I'll have a side of either the carnivore crisps that I have, like it's like a beef brisket. I wish I had a bag I could show you. So it's either beef brisket or sirloin, or sometimes they have lamb, or chicken and stuff like that. But I'm a fatty meat kind of girl, so I'll do the brisket or the ribeye, or I'll do lamb. So I'll have a bag of that with my salmon, and then sometimes what I'll also do is add like mussels or oysters or sardines or something like that to the salmon mix. Like I think today I have eel in my refrigerator thawing out, so I can air fry that along with my salmon skin. So it's funny because I used to just focus on eating one protein at a meal, but now I'm like, I like to have a wide swath. So that'll probably be lunch, and then dinner is basically the same thing, just in a little bit of a bigger amount. I eat a lot. Like I eat more than most people on a football team. Yeah, I mean I work out a lot too. I have a lot of workout equipment behind me, obviously. So I feel like I'm fueling my workouts. But like my husband, for instance, does not eat as much as I do. But again, it's all animal, and I feel really good doing it. So I'll always couple my salmon with beef, or maybe like chicken wings or something like that if they're available. So it's a little surf and turf.
So you mentioned your husband. Is he doing this with you?
No. No, he subsists on like fast food. The two restaurants that he loves to eat at are Chick-fil-A and Chipotle. Those are two very popular restaurants over here. And he barely cooks at home. If he does cook at home, he does cook a steak, but he'll have a baked potato with it. And he always asks me every single time he cooks, he goes, "Oh my God, I'm putting so much butter on this. I feel so bad. Like, this is so unhealthy for me." I'm like, "No, add the butter. Get rid of the potato and keep adding the butter. Like, come on." And I specifically get him the good grass fed and grass finished butter, just, emphasize the health benefits a little bit. But it's always so funny because, and then like sometimes he'll add heavy cream to something and he's like, "Oh God, my arteries are clogging." I'm like, oh gosh, all of this dated mentality is just has sunk into you and you cannot be changed. Like, I continually tell him, "You're fine." And all of his blood work always dictates that he's totally fine as well. But for some reason, his mom or something like that back in the day ingrained that butter was terrible in his mind.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, it's those marketing messages from, from when we're so little, like margarine is what you should eat,
Oh my
or,
gosh.
vegetable oils are the best thing you could ever cook with, and all this kind of thing. And it's very, very hard to change that in people, right?
Oh my gosh, it's so hard. I mean, what I do love about the carnivore lifestyle and how people are talking about it so much more these days is everybody is starting to call out the seed oils. And something that's very fascinating that I got to witness throughout my experience with keto, since I had started this when I was 14, and I am not 14 anymore, everybody, um, is stevia. Stevia was like unknown when I was 14, but I wanted something sweet. So I had to go and like buy it on the black market, basically. And I always thought to myself, I can't wait until drinks sweeten their products with stevia. It'll be so amazing when I can just go to the store and buy something that already has it in there. And it like just I watched the progression of the keto lifestyle, Atkins, all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden things started to come to the market that were sweetened with stevia, and then erythritol, and then sucralose, and all that kind of stuff. And it was such a fascinating thing. And then all of a sudden keto just blew up like crazy. And then carnivore all of a sudden comes to be. And I'm like, wow, it's only a matter of time before there are more products out there that have far less and if not no seed oils in them whatsoever, and they will be more cost effective. Because nowadays if you find a product that's made with olive oil or avocado oil or lard or something like that, they always make it $50,000, and basically unaffordable to the masses. Thus, people are like, "Well, I'm just going to go over here and eat this one that has, sunflower oil in it because it's so much more affordable." But I really feel like, come 5, maybe 10 years down the road, we're going to see products that are way more affordable that are far healthier for us because the masses are calling for them.
You started to get into this kind of lifestyle as a 14-year-old. Where this is when you were still at boarding school?
Yeah.
So when you were at boarding school as a 14-year-old, how were your peers and teachers looking at you as
Oh
you're
God.
eating kind of, "Oh, I can't have the bread," or "I can't have, the
Oh,
pasta," or
they
whatever?
they thought I was psycho. I will always remember I was in the dining hall and the announcements were going on before lunch was happening, and I took 2 hard-boiled eggs and I put them in a mug and I put them in the microwave. You can only imagine what happened. The microwave exploded during announcements, and everyone was like, "What is going on?" I mean, I was laughing my butt off because I thought it was hilarious. But I'll remember the chef from downstairs came upstairs and he just flat out yelled at me, basically telling me, like, "Why aren't you eating my food? I make this for everyone." Like, he was absolutely offended that I was not eating his food. And I'm like, and I just kind of looked at him dumbfounded, like, I mean, didn't you make these hard boiled eggs? Like, I kind of am eating that what you made, sort of. But I'm not the one to follow the norm and to really care what other people think. So, you know, at the end of the day, I'm like, dude, calm down. Like, my parents paid tuition. You're getting paid. Get out of my face here. But what I did was there was this restaurant, like made to order type of place close by to my school, and it was called Why Cook. And that's where my meatballs were. So I'd always go and I'd get 9 meatballs, and then I would get any other protein rich thing, like, they had like turkey and stuff like that. They didn't have any salmon. But I also, there was another health food market there, and I'd get bison to eat. And what was really nice is my boarding school was actually an old motel, and our room had a little kitchen in it so I could cook things. So I was eating my bison and I was eating my ground beef and all that kind of stuff. And when I had to go to, lunch or whatever, it was basically just for the announcements. And when the announcements were over, I could go back to my dorm room and cook something up. And it was a very small school, so like my peers didn't think I was weird, and like a lot of my friends would come back to the dorm with me and they would want to eat their own stuff anyway. So it really wasn't a big deal, and I feel like that is almost why I was and am still very confident in the foods that I eat. I'm never embarrassed to, make specific choices when I go to restaurants and to speak up for myself. And I feel like that's a huge problem with a lot of people who want to adopt this mentality, or this lifestyle rather, is they're embarrassed when they go to restaurants and they don't want to be an inconvenience or anything like that, when at the end of the day, you're paying for it. So if you're paying for it, shouldn't you get what you want? Now, obviously, if you go to some restaurant that has a set menu and they're not going to change the menu items, don't go there. But like if you go to a restaurant that has salads and they add chicken or they add salmon or they add steak or something to it, ask for the steak or the salmon or the chicken that they put on top of it. If there's a little upcharge, honestly, that could possibly be the case, but you just have to, go out knowing that it costs more to eat out versus cooking at home. But there's always options when you go out, unless you go to a vegan restaurant, then you're screwed. But you shouldn't go there.
Yeah. So has anyone around you said, "Well, this is pretty good. I don't have to think a lot about different types of recipes and stuff. If I want to eat, I might give this diet a try."
Um, Yes and no. I mean, on social media, yes. So I talk about this kind of stuff on social media. I'm not, again, pushing it down people's throats, but I do talk a lot about my salmon obsession, as I'm known as the salmon queen over there. And a lot of people will be like, I need to try the Gigi diet for a week or two, but no one's in my I don't even know what the word I'm trying to say is, but no one has really been like, yeah, I'm going to go for it just because you did it. And that's okay. I'm not the type of person that is trying to change anybody. If they want to change, that's wonderful, but they have to want to do it. I'm not going to be there changing anybody. Now, I've definitely encouraged people to add salmon or more protein to their lifestyles. And people definitely tell me that they feel so much happier and more energetic, and they see it in their skin and stuff like that, which is, great. But again, I'm not here to force anything on anybody. So yeah, I mean, I've always wanted my husband to like be carnivore for a week just because I want to see what happens to him. But he's also the type of person that nothing happens to him when he changes his ways. He just like he's just set in stone.
So for someone watching that, they might be thinking about trying carnivore or keto or something like that. Um, they'd be looking at carnivore specifically and thinking, perhaps, this is really restrictive. What would
Mm-hmm.
you say to that?
It's hard for me to answer that question because, as I said earlier, I am the type of person that could eat the same thing every single day. And I do. I eat my salmon and my meat chips every single day. And I never get sick of it ever. People look at me like I'm psychotic. That being said, it's not restrictive because if you think about it, there's beef, there's pork, there's chicken, there's a whole bunch of seafood, there's Kangaroo, there's ostrich, there's antelope, there's bear, there's moose, there's elk, there's venison. There are so many animals out there that you can eat. There's duck, there's turkey, there's goose. Like none of those things are off limits. Like as I said earlier, I'm going to go eat eel for lunch. No one thinks about eating eel for lunch, but you just have to think outside of the box. And that's what I did from a young age. When I moved back home after boarding school, I was bringing ostrich for lunch with me to school every day. And people would look at me like, the f- are you eating? And I'm like, get out of my face. This is my food. You can go eat your pizza in the cafeteria. Thank you. But like, that's the type of person I am. I seek out the odd foods. Like I've got, wild boar and antelope in my freezer waiting for me. My husband hunts and he got us a big bull elk. So we have 400 pounds of that meat in our freezer. So like we're good. And people need to realize that there's more than just beef and pork out there. Because a lot of times when I go into these carnivore groups, they're like, here's my ribeye and here's my big pat of butter and here's my bacon. And I'm like, that looks delicious. Don't get me wrong, but like there are other quote unquote fish in the sea.
Having had this lifestyle, since you were in your early teens, when you go to the supermarket and you see your normal average Joe kind of walking around with their cart, putting the boxes into their cart, I mean, do you feel like saying to them, that's not so good for you?
No, I, if they ask me, I will let them know how I feel. But at the end of the day, everyone is free to do what they want. As I said earlier, you are your own guinea pig. Or if you are considering bettering your health, then it's upon you to do your research as to what could potentially help you. If there's some average Joe walking down the supermarket aisle and he grabs the Funyuns and the Cheetos or whatever, I don't even look at junk food, so I don't even know what the names are. But if he's getting the cookies and the cakes in his cart, like that was his choice. I don't know what lifestyle or what journey he's on in general. It's not my place to just randomly be like, hey, bro, those cookies, not so good. Because, at the end of the day, I'm not here to make anybody feel bad. And there's enough mean people in this world. I'm not one of those people. So if that person were to ask me a question like, hey, do you think these are good? Or do you think I should go with that route? Or what do you think? Then sure, I'm gonna let you know. I don't know about the cookies. The cookies are really high in sugar. The better approach would probably be to eat more protein because when you're satiated with the protein and satiated with fat, and I would also tell them that they should eat fat, you're not going to think about the sweets and the junk because you're going to be so full that you're going to be thinking about other more important things in life like your family and your friends and your work and getting out into the world and experiencing the world versus what am I going to eat in 10 minutes because I ate a cookie that wasn't filling. So again, I'm not going to impart wisdom on people who don't ask because I personally would be super turned off by that. If someone were to judge something that I had put in my cart, if I was uneducated in the health world, I would probably think about that person all day and all night and wonder what they really meant by that. And then being a female, females tend to think about body image and then they would be like, oh, that person thought I was fat or they think I'm ugly or, something like that. Because women just, oh man, words just soak in and they overthink. I'm luckily not that kind of person. I'm very thick skinned. Everything rolls off my back. I literally don't care. You could call me a fat, ugly, whatever. And I'm like, that's your opinion. And that's great. You have an opinion. Whoop-de-doo. I'm not everyone's cup of tea. But there are a lot of women out there that aren't like this. And the last thing that I want to do and that I want anyone to do to anybody else is make them feel like crap. Like, I feel like everybody's kind of their own worst enemy already. So let's try and be nice to one another.
I've led a pretty unhealthy lifestyle. I've just heard about carnivore, and I come to you and I say, look, how can I get started with this, Gigi? I really don't know the best way to approach this. I know I'm going to probably go through some cravings and that kind of thing. What would you recommend?
I think what I would tell them is, or ask them, what is your favorite source of protein right now? If it was beef or if it was chicken or whatever, I'd say, okay, go to the store and enjoy buying a whole bunch of different cuts of that meat. So, you could get a ribeye, you could get a skirt steak, you could get some burgers, you could get, some liver, whatever, if you're feeling exotic, and try them out and see how or which cut you like the best, how you like them prepared, and just, if you're gonna go for it, go for it. And then I would say go get some salmon too, because the salmon's always very important. But that's kind of the main thing that I would do. And then I would also tell them, get rid of the other stuff in your house, the bulk that is not quote unquote allowed on carnivore. So get rid of the vegetables, get rid of the pasta, get rid of all of the stuff in your house that might have you when you're feeling weak and need something, like, ooh, I need to get my pasta, and then you eat the pasta and you feel guilty about it, because one of the worst feelings in the world is feeling guilty. So if out of sight, out of mind. So you need to stock up on the stuff that's part of the carnivore lifestyle, your favorite meats, and try and get yourself excited about the prospect of eating like a pound of a steak or a pound of salmon or whatever your heart's content is in the animal meat world. And if you eat it for your 2-3 meals a day and you feel sick, well, then you got to reevaluate on how much fat you were eating that day, because sometimes people who eat too much fat feel very nauseated and they might be running to the bathroom, whether they're throwing up or the other, or what have you, but which would mean, like, okay, maybe continue to eat the ribeye, but instead of also eating that really fatty piece of salmon, maybe have some halibut, something a little less fatty, and maybe not put so much butter on it. Like, there are people who are eating sticks of butter, and I'm honest to God convinced they literally just do that for a view on a video, because no one in the right mind is eating a whole stick of butter just sitting there. I mean, maybe you do, Dave, but I swear people literally are just, they have their phone and they're recording themselves eating because they want to get 1 million views, and they don't care if people in the comments are being mean to them. They just want attention. Sorry, not sorry. That's how I feel. And a lot of times, if people were to sit there and eat a stick of butter, later when you're in the bathroom, it's not going to be such a great time. But I'm not going to say cut out butter, because having a tablespoon or two on top of your juicy steak is delicious, and I think should be incorporated if you can have dairy. I personally can't eat dairy, actually, so I don't do butter and all that kind of stuff. I do a lot of olive oil, which isn't technically carnivore, but girl likes her olive oil, she's gonna do it. Lard is fine too. Lard I can handle. And other fats from animals, and I drink salmon fat. So I got a little off topic there, but that would be my advice is, and honestly, if I lived close by to this person who wanted to be carnivore, I'm like, let's go to the grocery store together. Because it's like one of my favorite places to go. Yeah, kind of pathetic in that way.
Nice. So Gigi, how can people reach out to you? Do you have social media, or do you have a
Yeah.
website or anything like that?
Yeah, so on Instagram, I'm Gigi Eats, Gigieats. And I answer every single DM. I do. I want people to know that I'm human, and that, they can talk to me whenever they want, really. So that's the best form of communication with me, in all honesty. I used to have a website. Well, I do have a website, but I used to blog. I used to do all the other things, but I'm like, you know what? Instagram is just like a one-stop shop for all of it. So you guys can all talk to me there if you want to.
Awesome. Well, I'll link to your Instagram below. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, Gigi. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for having me.